welcome, Emile. You're sitting here in our little bit of small space. You'll see at the back it's Moja Multimedia, and then you'll pick up the tagline is changing the narrative. In my own way, I think it must be disrupting the narrative. So some of my partners say, wacht, don't go too harsh. And then we've also got Zoetic Management, their research unit. It is friends that are just looking at Africa, looking at the world from a view of, should I say, internationalist perspective, that are very, very concerned about where society at large are going and how things impact on each other. So that's what we do. It is one where we believe the global south is critical, and today it's more stark in the context of issues relating to what the UN is supposed to be about and what it is not. And then taking those discussions, and then one can come back home, and the person in Bonteheuwel or in Kalich or in Soweto, how does that individual relates to what happens in the globe, or not relate to that, or when the bread price go up, the electricity goes up, the fuel, etc. How does the one impact on the other? So I think there's a debate in society required, and so that we become less superficial in our process. And part of what I personally think is our post-94 scenario at schools, I'm speaking schools, where you and I, in all likelihood, I always say to people that ons is nie omdat ons miskien smart was, maar in die laat 80s, there was a teacher at school that gave us alternative education.
Exactly.
So whilst we still had that books and we still had to do what the normal education was, there was definitely a few teachers at those schools that conscientized us. Not in a political way, but in a societal way. But welkom terug in South Africa. Is altyd in South Africa, and jy sien jou gereeld hier. It's like it's as if you're a virtual human being. So a little bit of your own background and welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean my background is I'm a qualified school teacher as well. So I taught for 3 years, and just before our first election, in '93, I decided to leave, and the reason was because of the content was just too Eurocentric. I just couldn't take it. And I was learning a lot of Black consciousness from hip hop. And so that made me, like, when you're in the class and you feel like you're doing the work of, in that era was the enemy. Like, why would you want to do that to young Africans? And the more I was reading, different information from around the world at that stage, the more I felt awkward teaching. And so I was like, how do I change that? And obviously toured with Black Noise, and while I was touring, wherever I went in the world, they were asking about the politics, asking about how can hip hop bring that change.
Which period would have been there?
This was 94, immediately after 94, 95. Actually, during the election, Black Noise was performing at all of these election campaigns of the ANC. And so I was learning, like, sitting, listening to whoever the politician was speaking and thinking about, is this going to bring about the change that we want to see? And I always thought about the science of it. Like, if a force, which is a part that is traveling at a specific speed, you need to meet that force with the equal and opposite speed to bring it to a stop. And like, we aren't applying an equal and opposite information, because information, in honesty, is what is power. It's not knowledge, because knowledge is made up of information. So whoever controls the information controls what people think. And so that constantly rang in my mind, how are we changing this? And how do I bring this to the schools? And eventually it was like, come back and teach like this to break. But ons maar miskien rhyme skrywe, want onthou mos recitasies. I mean, I can still say Eugene Marius Wintersnacht that I was taught at school back when I was like 10 years old. So I was like, how can I change using rap? In putting this information, this consciousness into raps that kids are learning, because then they'll remember that for the rest of their lives. And so that essentially is what we did with Heal the Hood, since I think it was 98 was the first time we implemented that. And then I did practical hip hop school. I took 4 ladies from Lavendale, and I asked them all the questions that I thought would shift their thinking. You know, like one of the questions was like, tell me good things about your community. I man is het pas, hulle het gesukkel.
Sukkel because of the area and
and also what media said about them and what everyone around them. And it took a while, and then afterwards they were like, yo, Emile, Auntie Jenny, I still remember the lady's name in the rap song, because they wrote a rap about it. Sy is daar buite, sy maak hy tuin na voor Lavendale, if you drive past on, what's it, Prince George Drive, I think is the name. So they started expanding their perception, and they started seeing your horses ain't the good majority. You know, and so it was my idea of teaching shifted. It wasn't linear anymore. It was a conversation. Because I was unlearning that I was right, and that they actually had. They had the knowledge.
There's a wealth of knowledge right there, exactly. But it's how you unearth it.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
the issue.
Exactly. They were saying, because I was sharing about the Bushman idea of becoming a man, and you have to go hunt. To say, yo, Emile, staan nie wat die gangs eintlik nou doen nie om 'n man te wees met jou nou. You know what I mean? I was like, yo. So they were showing like the parallels that, you know, and I don't even know that guy Don Pinnock, I think, wrote this book. I think it was called Gangtown or something. Gangland, but we're the gangsters. So I took them to the talk. To say, man, upset. I'm gonna say, how can this guy have a PhD? Studying us
and speak about us.
You know. So it was a hell of a learning curve, but also for them, because then I told them, praat man. Because initially they were like, yo, Emile was really EVC, because they felt that cops, they couldn't speak. Because people always put it down, right? And so the more I gave them the opportunity to speak, the more they started like, okay, take someone translate for us. So they felt comfortable in their own skin and actually challenged the guy, like stood up and said, this is what we feel about what you're doing, because this is one view of us, you know. And like, unfortunately, when people speak about Lavendale, that's what they...
And your Hilderwood focused, if you need to explain it now to people out there that actually know about you, know what you've achieved back then, but in the context of Hilderwood, just what is it about?
Yeah, I mean, Hilderwood is using arts, or at this point even sport, to redirect kids' sense of self-worth. You know, because also gemeenskap hulle kyk altyd af. Even when they dance, you have to tell them, lift your head, say your name with pride. So the self-worth is really what's lacking. And so Hilderwood tries to give information that gets young people a sense of self-worth. You know, and so hence the syllabus I wrote is called as Afrocation. You know, and we teach in Kaps a lot of the time, because that's maybe the schools that are closest and that's the language they speak. And we also bring information that, you know, like the first March 1510 conversation, the creation story of Kachen, Bushman, a lot of Bushman stories.
And you found that in bringing that to our younger generation, in the way you bring it, you think there is a
definitely.
There's like this hard academic teacher approach to it.
Exactly. Because it's also giving them a sense of like, it doesn't exist. So they almost feel like the first ones to tell their parents this information. They like, when they come back, they say, my mommy asked, where did this come from? You know? So they're teaching their parents, because their parents also are hungry for history that they didn't know, you know. But also it's a deeper feeling of achievement that they, and one of the examples is when we say, kyk, in Afrikaans is daar so gogga kriekie kwagga dagga is almal Bushman woorde, and then the kids who are closer, the clique that used to have this thing in common, like you said, was this history, and now there's this interaction and this, you know, the sense of belonging,
a relation, belonging.
You know?
You are also based in the US.
For my sons.
and then a little bit of the experiences, the way you see this now, this whole kind of activities, and not even speaking about the Trump story, but more the the way I looked at it, years back, I was part of what they call the American Council for Young Political Leaders. I think hulle wil my geïndoctrinated, niks anders nie. So we went to various states there. The various states, I remember even Jack Bloom, I think he's from the DA in Gauteng. He was on that program, a little bit more older than me. There was a lady in KZN, a white female, that was part of it. I was kind of the youngest. So we were like a team of 6, 7. But obviously the White House and a range of others. Subsequently, I did visit the White House when under Obama, etc., President Obama. But what I felt, there was a lot of ignorance at that point about what Africa was, and not only from, say, white Americans. I felt it was even from guys that were on the lunch or dinner table, and they were black, they were black Americans. But I felt there was a lot of inward looking and not knowing what the world is about and what Africa is about.
The world view is very limited.
Is it?
I'm constantly shocked because it's sold as being like so progressive, but in actual fact, it's very
inward looking.
Yeah, very insular, very like when something happens, then they call it a world event, but the world's not really, you know. I mean, also just access to international. I have to constantly search for international news because it's so localized in the US, you know. And the other thing I think that stands out is like the lack of, I suppose maybe Ubuntu is the best way, or humanity. Yeah. You know, it's like it's a very I-centered. It's not a we-centered society, and to their own detriment. Because obviously, you know, capitalism. If I push I, it's you can't. There's no collective. You know. So I think that's and then just the. You must arrange play dates for the ladies, and when my kids come here, they jump over the fence and they play with the kids. So it's all the things that you have free access to your grandmother and your whole family. There, people are very the family unit's very small. Yeah, you know, and so I think they could learn a lot about going back to that lesson of the collective,
the community.
Yeah, the community. Yeah.
Just back to the process here. What we find now is there's a lot of unemployment in our communities. I'm specifically concerned around those things because I was somebody that was in government. So I always say to people that the answers must be less people like me that were in government. It must be more those that actually were not there, because I think if those of us that were there, and I'm speaking, doesn't matter which political party or government institutions, whether it's the president or whether it's the leader of the opposition or whoever, we were there for many a year, and the result of our activities is more inequality, high levels of unemployment. So part of what I'm looking at currently is how do one use your experience, but also use your network to try and do right where we also as individuals or collectivity in the state has gone wrong. So I personally believe the answer for the next many a year in South Africa is less of those that were there like myself, but more others, but backed up by a consciousness. And arts and culture, I suspect, is in the creative world, is an area where it can impact very profoundly on young people and lives, and not necessarily the person that's viewing it, but I'm speaking for career opportunities, career paths. Is that something that you think is, so in my headspace, how do you get a skills revolution going, but how do you understand that only so many people will be able to study engineering, quantity surveying and architecture, or in the medical field, but the bulk of our people in the communities would be able to get into the arts and culture space. And I suspect there's something there that can intervene, that can massify opportunities. As a reg, and you are a specialist in the field.
Definitely.
So just to hear your
I mean, the thing is also we have a very linear view of art.
This is the story of our creation. Here in Africa, long before the rest of the world knew about the greatness of who we are, it is said that man lived inside the earth, in a place where the sun shone all the time, but there was no sun. And Kachin was the god, the great ruler of all things. Most people know him as praying mantis or Hottentots God. And he one day decided to leave that world and prepare the world above that we now live in. And he went out and he grew trees that stretched for miles and covered the earth in beautiful greenness. And when he saw all was beautiful and great, he decided to return.
Right? Actually, we have a very specific view of art. And when you change the terminology from art to creativity, because everything requires creative thinking. Like we had this creating solutions conversation with young people. Like, what is my problem that I'm faced with? How do I solve it? And so how do I create a solution to this problem? How much do I need to solve this problem? And what are my skills that I can use creatively to get to that point? You know, so it's like, I use this example at the school. I have 1,000 kids. I say, look around you, name one thing that an artist created. And they're like, and they always say that, that manachi, that exit manachi. Yeah. They always say, that, because that's in the wall, right? Yeah. Then you say, think a bit more. Then someone will say, the school's design, the badge on the school's design. Then someone else say, okay, the actual design of the school uniform. And that starts unpacking everything else. Person's frame of the specs, the chair they're sitting in, the actual building, and the architect designed the building. And so the view then becomes broader. Okay. And so then the next question is, why, when you then ask your parents if you're an artist, or you want to be an artist, they say no. And if all these things has economic potential, but you can't see it, right? Yeah. So I think that's the thing. And then showing them, like the other example I always ask, who draws well? Like, as altijd the over doodle. Saying, that bra over there. When they point him out, I say, did you ever ask your parents? They're like, no. My parents will say no. Yeah. And I say, they ask them, who Stan Lee is? No. Yeah, of course I know, it's the Marvel guy. They say, he drew just like you. But the difference is, he believed that those things could become not only illustration, but animation, and then actual movies, and all the products, the lunch boxes, the duvet covers, the pillowcases, the curtains, the onderbroekjes. And it's all potentially diversifying people's, not only the creative potential, but also the income potential. So when you say that, immediately I think of we already do it. The aunties that make bolas, or what make kusistas or donuts as an extra, those are creative ways to also.
How do you bring them into an ecosystem, and how does that ecosystem interchange with, I would argue, with institutions of the state to help them, because the auntie out there is doing but struggling on its own. And here we've got, I think, regulatory environments that don't realize it's not big corporates that bring employment opportunities. It's actually SMMEs. It's informal traders. Exactly. And those are the creators. It's how one pulls that into some form of ecosystem and then put the support mechanism.
I remember when they first brought the mall to Mitchell's Plain, and there was a huge conversation. They had this big quad section in the middle where all the local businesses would be able to have possibilities of having stall, And when I first heard that, I was like, that's what's necessary. So you don't set up this multinationals to take all the money out of the community. You make sure that the locals have that potential. So I think that what you're saying there about how government thinks about is, how do you actually create spaces where people can and also have regulations in place where others can't come in and do what they do, because that extraction is the problem.
Ik ga een voorbeeld geven, just to in that particular point. You've got this gooi in communities, in poorer communities. Everyone puts in 500 Rand, 1,000 or 3,000 Rand a month. End of the year, ik mors altijd. Then I say to the guys, because I'm trying to tell them, let's do a property investment, but they're all talking about the food, right? So now I'm saying, what they do is, so end of the year, somebody gets his 20,000 Rand because of the work for the year, and they go to ShopRite, they go to Pick n Pay. In there, they walk in there, it's not jingle bells, but feel. and the guy that owns Pick n Pay and Shoprite, they'll sit somewhere and they'll smile.
Yeah.
But you are we just consumers. We just like so it is that it's a different style.
But that's in the education as well.
Yeah,
like if we educate young people about the power of their money, because it's a capitalist democracy. It's not. You know what I mean? So people think the vote's more important than how you spend your money. But in truth, we need to teach that from a very young age already.
It's the economic model. So to the young people, I want to say that it's very, very important to, if you struggle, if you have challenges, please look at your own capabilities, your own creativity, and then find ways to bring that to the forth. I've seen last year there was a recognition that for the work that you've done. I think there was an award granted. Do you want to just mention that to them?
Oh yeah, it was the president's, the National Order of Ikamanga and silver.
Yeah.
For his contribution in the field of arts and hip-hop culture in South Africa. His art history and activism formulated a unique lexicon, now firmly known as Africap, explaining the African origins of hip-hop.
Presented for my contributions to the work in the community. Yeah, it was kind of awkward because we don't normally get accolades for what you do. Yeah. But it was refreshing that, and I mean, I didn't realize until the guys at the Hip Hop Museum were saying that opens a door for hip hop to realize that can be celebrated.
It is, but it's also, it becomes, it's that order, because I now know the other type of orders of Baobab, etc. So if I look at one of the people that also years back received, I'm not speaking political people, I'm speaking culture, Oma Katrina in Uppington. And so if one takes herself, one take you, one take a few others, I think there's power in a discussion of people that receive that order, and how does that connect into the world, because that opens opportunities again for that struggling person on the ground that can see the value in it.
And you know, the thing is that when people speak arts, they always speak about the ones who made it. And often I ask, what is it? You know, because like the question also has to be, how do you explain to someone that it's not the person that made it, but the person who constantly survived using their creativity, because that's what you really want. Because most people who made it are ones who are brought into an existing capitalist system, and they're always a minority. So I'd rather have the old buddy who's like really been at it for his whole life, tell me and share with the majority how he went about that. You know, I mean, like I left, like I said, in '93. And since then, I've just used my creative ability to survive, you know, which, you know, was not an easy thing. But I feel like if I'm from Glossy Park and I'm from Cape Town, it's, you know, they always say that it's easier in Joburg, or or they say that line about if you make it in New York, you got it. I don't think so. If you're from the Cape Flats and you're able to survive.
Then there's a particular methodology still required,
So you're right about that, to get that collective together, to have conversations with, you know, even with I think with government, or, you know, just about how that can be implemented. So that from cradle to grave, there's a conversation about what are the lullabies that are sung by the parents. And the big diversity of lullabies that can be documented, the bedtime stories, that, because from birth that kid is learning that information, and if it's localized, then it means that the illustrations in the books will be connected, the animation, all of there's a whole market that will localize it and make the money rotate locally. You know, instead of as alles maar onmiddellik SpongeBob and Superman.
Exactly. So final point that I wanted to bring forth is a week or two ago, Jolien Martin and I were discussing this notion, and it was like also out on Afrikaans and the way language was used in the past as an instrument for education.
Yeah.
We are in the year 50 years into our experience of the Soweto uprising, which was the 76 uprising. We had that in Cape Town. We had that all over the country. That led to young people essentially resisting.
Yeah.
And there was a debate many moons ago in South Africa about Afrikaans and algemeen beskaafde Afrikaans.
Oh, yeah.
En vis-à-vis, en is dit die taal van die verdrukker? Of is dit die taal ook van die geonderdrukte? De late Randall van den Jefe wrote a book Afrikaans, die taal van die onderdrukte ook. So, jy het vroeger gepraat oor Afrikaans of van Afrikaans, Kaap. A message, and I know you're also a poet, and I've seen that on Facebook. So as ek sal wil hoor jou sentiment oor die dialekte en Afrikaans, and then obviously end off, if you can, with a bit of a saying in Afrikaans as well.
You know, when I learned about the information of Kaaps, because Kaaps essentially, we use that terminology, or Afrikaans, because it's born here in Cape Town, and because it's a Creole language, and was taken by the Boers and reshaped to sound more Dutch. And so they made a dictionary and what was the other thing? The Bible. And so they institutionalized the belief that it's their language, which is not true. Right? And so I discovered that only in, 2008, when we started writing the production of Afrikaans. And it blew my mind that it was, they knew about it at UCT, and the Muslim community, like the first Afrikaans is actually documented in the madrasa in phonetic Arabic, and so that, it opened my eyes to like, this lighties that I work with, if I share this with them, it will give them that sense of self-worth and like reboot their confidence, So it's a very powerful way to get people back to their Afrocentricity. And because all of the breadcrumbs are right there, pisang, lachang, it's from the East. And so that's part of their heritage as well. But also this oldest people, this First Nation home. And so Kaaps really, I think, has the potential to heal a lot of us. Even the Afrikaners, because I performed and said this in front of them at Voorkamerfees, and they were like, meneer, ek het nie geweet, die is eintlik die Oose taal, because they've been lied to for such a long time. So for me, like, one of the central words that I've heard them speak about is die kom vandaan. And like, learning this gave me a new sense of pride in like my mom teaching me about Als and about Bohu. And I always wondered, she is so religious, maar sy ken al die Boesmanraadjies, so it was like, we used to be afraid of saying that out loud. And so this kom vandaan, the sense of who we are and where we're from, like, I mean, even after I did like the whole research on Black consciousness, it couldn't give me that actual
the kom vandaan.
That kom vandaan. And so for me, that word really, that idea really like sits deep inside of like, and why I come home so often, because of my parents in the 80s, but also that I have a deep responsibility to this place that I am. Not only to the ones that I work with, but like just generally the ones, even the perpetrators of the of the new data snatching, for them to realize that kom vandaan and how strong it actually is.
Ek weet nie of jy is nie nodig nie, maar as jy enige kort phrase of twee wil sê in Afrikaans.
I played with this. I'll do a short piece of because sometimes people forget that this language is that old. So all the K's and the C's, I added a click to it. So it's a ek sê kwaad kale klomp van die Kalahari kam gam in die man en die galaga die gehang hangsters wat gou aan 'n gamgordel skryp.
Sure. Talent. So ek wil jou sê Emile, ons is in die ronde. En ek dink miskien jou punt oor conversation. As jy 'n conversation initiate en mens met 'n netwerk van mense bymekaar bring. Ek wil ook sê ek dink dit is julle eie T-shirt en julle eie
Dis nog 'n vriend wat hier in die gemeenskap
but van die gemeenskap en ontwerp etc. So dankie dat jy omgee. Thanks that you didn't forget your confidence, as they say. And I think a big issue is about the conscientization of humanity.
Yeah.
Ek dink ons het dit verloor. Ek sê baie keer vir mense, ja, is belangrik dat mense leiers in gemeenskappe is. Ek praat nou van kerkleiers, imams, kerkleiers of etc. Political leiers en al daai. But is that conscientization? It's not the word leier, it's ook nie die woord servant leier, but it's the conscientization of them. And we must continue building conscious leaders. So baie dankie dat jy uit jou pad het gaan en dat jy gebruik die woord responsibility, of het jy gesê jy het 'n woord daar gebruik. Ek noem dit a beautiful burden of responsibility. Dit is al wil man ook, miskien wil jy mense raak mos ook nie meer jonger, jy wil later ook nie meer, maar jy het amper 'n keuse nie, want dit is die ancestors wat praat met 'n mens. En ek dink daarom ek dink ek is partykeer as jy so moeg, jy lus nie meer vir dit, of jy dink maar mense is nie altyd so waarderend nie, but then actually you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for their very inner being, for something that people can't see. It's there in the horizon, in terms of what the deeper side of humanity and consciousness and creating a better world out there is. En ek glo daar is definitief, there's more good than bad. En so jy is een van die persone wat mense van daarbo en reg onder by mekaar bring. Well done, and thanks so much for all the work that you're doing.
Thanks so much, man.
Say you want in the cat, you want to bluff, gaan bluff die kat. Die kat is a die close, so he don't cry. So skrappen in the bakkie, trek die kat in mekaar af. En die wat denk ek doe is die kat wat sy verblaf. Say you want in the cat, you want to bluff, gaan bluff die kat. Die kat is a die close, so he don't cry. So skrappen in the bakkie, trek die kat in mekaar af. En die wat denk ek doe is die kat wat sy verblaf.
Ek speel my in 'n situasie om te praat soos ek praat in 'n professionele spasie. Smarty, harty, vir hy job as ek my CV in Afrikaans. You have to be inebriated by your own verbosity. There's a certain quality, het is nie vir gepaste sê, ek wil net sê, hoek op by 'n mens op my straat wie. Reason B, they don't have the skill to sum a white team. My lighty, ek sal jou man moet steen na university. Jou speel die game saam, op basie, op basie. Die bolles moet in ons op van ou basie passie. Wat moet jy complain, het sy nie saam kan praat. Die staat jou eie company, ja gooi sy cent in die botsie. Is konie, quality is snaaksie. Die hond mag die blaffie, hy moet mee kling na 'n katsie. As ek gaan praat, dan lyk het al die vensters gaan breek. My taal moet ek auto-tune om in te klik.
As jy jou hond in die kat, die om te blaf, gaan blaf die kat. Die kat is a die close, so he don't cry. So skrappen in 'n bakkie, trek die kat in mekaar af. En die wat denk ek doe is die kat wat sy verblaf. As jy jou hond in die kat, die om te blaf, gaan blaf die kat. Die kat is a die close, so he don't cry. So skrappen in 'n bakkie, trek die kat in mekaar af. En die wat denk ek doe is die kat wat sy verblaf.
Ek is gearm en 'n vocabulary, my tong maak 'n geklappery. Ek maak die skape die mekaar sodat sy kan wakker bly. Hoe sien sy jou op me die way ek my woorde pronounce, so ek was designing with some bas, my middelvinger sieke te stry. Ek sê gangans vir die gangans, was in die tak om 'n lankan. Long talk to freedom, kakabine loop a manka. My Engels droog op, soos die water in Cape Town. En sy vir Afrikaans my so bietjie van die swai brand. Julia, die taal is 'n nagamdela. Opas is skiet my taal af, soos die Marokana. They don't judge you by your character, they judge you by your vocab. No man, I speak Afrikaans, but just with no swag. Time en again is die kat in die binne die fashion trends. Wat die papi dink hy's lucky van hy's oupas is best friend. But basie dis look hy die straw, vocally gestremd. Pretend hy is oupas, but vergiet hy is gemeng.
As jy jou hond in 'n kat wie om te blaf, gaan blaf die kat. Die kat is 'n diepklo, so hy don't krap. So skrappe in 'n bakkie trek die kat in mekaar af. En die wat dink hy doe is as die kat wat sy verblaf. As jy jou hond in 'n kat wie om te blaf, gaan blaf die kat. Die kat is 'n diepklo, so hy don't krap. So skrappe in 'n bakkie trek die kat in mekaar af. En die wat dink hy doe is as die kat wat sy verblaf.
Die is vir die Kaapse katte wat nou net syfer blaf. As ander katte miauw as hulle, that's not good enough. Sy's laf, het sommer die hele punt gemis. En dis is ons confidence uitgewis. Die kat sal dan blaf soos die hond wat hy dink hy is. Syfer sal hy blaf om by die honde in te pas. Ja, soos die katte dink dat miauw wie het al is hy. En met tyd sal hy nie eers sy eie taal missie. Dis die excusie as hulle om moet vraag. Sê gauwe ietsie in jou moedertaal op bra. Jou taal sê in die boeke nie, en boekie in die schoolie. En die honde sê miauw is slang en die coolie. En nou maak hulle even die syfers hulle toe. Want die honde is bang, you'll find a cat inside of you. Sê soos hy weet dat eintlik ja is die Kaapse katte wat die taal beginne teers.
As jy jou hond in 'n kat wie om te blaf, gaan blaf die kat. Die kat is 'n diepklo, so hy don't krap. So skrappe in 'n bakkie trek die kat in mekaar af. En die wat dink hy doe is as die kat wat sy verblaf. As jy jou hond in 'n kat wie om te blaf, gaan blaf die kat. Die kat is 'n diepklo, so hy don't krap. So skrappe in 'n bakkie trek die kat in mekaar af.